Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, what will the upcoming election mean for the stock market, the dollar, and employment? Our old friend, the original host of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, will be in the studio to host a special pre-election look at the economy, and then I'll be back for a look at senior health care, Pennsylvania politics and government in depth and in detail, and guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host.
Thank you, Terry Madonna. It's great to be back here on the set of JPL Studios here at Pennsylvania Newsmakers, where I used to host from time to time, some time ago, longer ago probably than I'd like to admit. And Terry, thank you for the invitation to be here for the next couple of segments of the program. Well, if you're watching this show, you're a news consumer, and you're probably concerned about the financial present and future of the country, about the economics in America. And you're wondering, will the elections that are about to occur solve the problems that we face in the country? Are we in a recovery? And if so, why doesn't it feel like one? And what would it take to get a genuine economic recovery? And how do you get through tough times like this? I think these are the questions that almost everyone that I run into is asking. And I have a couple of gentlemen here who I think can answer them with wisdom and perceptiveness and clarity. Russ Crosson is here from Ronald Blue & Company. He's the CEO of that firm. And Vince Birley is also with Ronald Blue & Company, and he's the Chief Strategy Officer. Gentlemen, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
What's the occasion that brings you to town, Russ? Why are you here in Pennsylvania?
Well, Jerry, we've been up here. We have an office in Baltimore, Maryland, and we're opening up in Lancaster. I guess I said that right here in Pennsylvania, and so we were up here doing some events last night.
So a new office.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why Pennsylvania? Why Lancaster?
Well, you know, we're just trying to get closer to where the clients are and be there to meet some needs. So there's some folks up here we need to work with, and so we need to be a little closer to them. Got it.
Vince, I keep hearing people in the media talk about the upcoming election. I'm talking about the financial media, yes, right? The commentators. Right. And I get the impression that they think that if we just have good results in the upcoming election, it's done. We're out of the woods, everything, there's no problem, it's over with, our long national nightmare of economic disruption is over, and it's smooth sailing. Well, I mean, your job in the firm is to look at things from the strategic level. In your opinion, will a successful wave of pro-growth candidates in the congressional election get us out of the woods?
Well, it's a question that we are often asked because everyone wants that to be the answer. Everyone wants to be able to vote somebody in and say, okay, our problems are solved now. We think that the reality around that is it's a good start. And what you have to face is that there isn't going to necessarily be a quick fix to a problem that's been generated over a long period of time.
Russ, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, we have a long-term problem, and it takes time to get out of a long-term situation. We violate a lot of principles over the years, and thus we find ourselves where we are. And so it's going to take a while to get out. What
principle or principles stand out as being violated right now by our nation in your mind?
Well, I spoke years ago at Promise Keeper events around the country, and talking on the whole debt issue, and the average consumer debt at that point was $12,000 per person, and the idea of overspending eventually catches up with you, and using debt to fund lifestyle and other purchases has consequences.
I think what I'm hearing from you is that this isn't an electoral issue in and of itself. This is a broad cultural issue, right? Like if a firm has a bad culture, well, you can bring in some new people, but you got to change the culture, right? And it can happen with families, and it can happen with nations too. So there's a cultural problem, and you don't undo a cultural problem with a single election, or maybe not with any number of elections.
Well, we got to realize things are consequential. There's truth, and then there's lie. And there's consequences. You're free to accept or reject the truth, but you're not free from the consequences. And we as a country and we as individuals are experiencing consequences of repeatedly not applying sound principles.
What's the lie?
Well, the lie is, for example, one lie in the investment market is you can get rich quick. Well, that's a lie. Steady plodding brings prosperity.
Yes.
Okay, so we seek after high yield, we take undue risk. That's in the investment thing. Another one is that, I want it today. And you know, so you deserve it. You know, the commercials. You deserve a break, so you know, just go out and buy everything you want right now and pay for it with cheaper dollars later. And so these subtle little things that we've learned, and you know, the business schools, OPM, and all that have accumulated to the point where we find ourselves as a country and as individual families in a quandary.
So the lie in this case, it's a personal lie, but it's also a national lie. The lie is you can spend your way into prosperity.
Right.
And that somehow people understand that doesn't work on a personal level, at least they should. I think they understand it, but violate it anyway.
Right.
Isn't that what you've seen the most? That when you teach this principle to someone, I assume very few people say, well, that doesn't sound right. Right?
Yeah, everybody agrees you should spend less than you make and get out of debt and things like that, but the discipline and the stick-to-itiveness, the accountability to actually do that. Plus, most people aren't realistic.
Yes.
They think, well, I am spending less than I make, but they leave a lot of things out of their budget.
Yes.
You know, like car repair, auto repair, home repair.
Just so long as nothing goes wrong, I'll keep
then
my
I'm
budget.
okay.
Right.
Or maybe they haven't paid their estimated taxes and they feel like they're doing okay until April comes.
Right.
And so just getting real is the first step. So people may want to, but they don't, you know, get their arms around it and deal with reality.
So, Vince, if you look at the national level, I mean, do any of these problems, do any of these realities cease to appear if you just, you know, add 9 zeros? Right? If someone might make $100,000 a year, or an economy might produce $10 trillion a year, but does that, you know, or $100 trillion in liabilities and assets, do these principles only apply to individuals, or is this a national thing as well?
Well, it is a national thing, and I don't think people have actually personalized this national issue. If you take that public debt and you divide it into the number of people in this country, and you put that on their balance sheet, there would actually be some reality to it. But since it really doesn't impact them personally, they really don't make any decisions about it from a personal perspective.
Yes.
So the congressional leaders or our leaders really aren't necessarily taking the fact that these are liabilities that you've added to our balance sheet. That's starting to become aware, and I think people are starting to say, wait a minute, this is too much.
Right.
This is going down the wrong road, and you know, you usually don't care about debt until it personally impacts you.
I see. It's almost like every American household has a teenager with a credit card that they don't know about, who's and you're not getting the monthly statements, and they've been at it for decades. There's 435 teenagers in the United States Congress, but they're out there racking up liabilities that we're not really getting reports on, or at least accurate reports. All right. Well, that raises a question I want to come back to. We started this segment, come back in the next segment, which is, if this is a broad cultural problem, do we end it with one election? This is an important election coming up, but does it solve our problems? I'm Jerry Bowyer. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and we'll be back in just a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. My name's Jerry Bowyer. Your regularly scheduled host, Terry Madonna, will be back in just a moment to finish up the second half of this program. But I want to thank Terry for inviting me in to talk about some economic issues. And I'm talking with the leadership team from Ronald Blue & Company, who are in town to launch a new office. And they're focusing on a principled approach to looking at economic questions and financial questions. And I should point out, I'm in town to speak. Just spoke at the conference that a client event that kicked off this new office, and we've been doing business for some time now. And what's attracted me to working with you gentlemen is this principle-centered approach.
Programs that they're phasing in.
And Vince, I think what people maybe fail to understand, but you don't fail to understand, is that principles apply not just to individuals but to nations. And therefore, it has consequences whether we keep principles or don't keep the proper principles. They have consequences for an economy, and therefore they have consequences for investments. So you have to keep your eye on what's going on with the culture, with sort of the spiritual foundation of a society, and with the political culture. Right?
Right.
Okay. So where are we now in America, and if you want to add the world? And are we at a place where good election results, and by good election results I mean more pro-investment or pro-growth candidates, get us out of there, get us out of our problems? And if they don't, then what does get us out?
Right. Well, there's been a philosophy that's been around since about the 1930s that says that you can spend your way into prosperity, that you just need more dollars available. And so what you want to do is make sure there's enough dollars to be spent. So it's a demand-driven economy. And you see that often and when you hear the news people talk as far as, well, we need more spending.
Yes.
That's how you get the economy going. And I think what you're starting to see is that makes sense in the short term. You put more money on the table, more money will get spent.
Yes.
But there's long-term consequences to it, which we talked in the former session about, which is the debt that accumulates. And we're starting to get to the end game of what that results in, which is, wait a minute, there's all this public debt.
Right.
It didn't actually go for anything that was productive.
Right.
And now you're looking at some economic issues associated with carrying all that debt at the public
You're talking
level.
about the views of Lord John Maynard Keynes.
Yes.
That's Keynesianism.
Keynesianism.
Spending leads to productivity,
Right.
or leads to prosperity.
Right.
Okay. So so stimulus plans
Right.
are an attempt to use that Keynesian model. What are the long-term consequences of Keynesianism?
The long-term consequences is simply you end up with a bunch of public debt that is non-productive that you have to pay back.
So we're Greece.
We're Greece.
Yes.
And what normally takes place is then you have this is the difficulty we're facing, is that we're starting to understand the consequences of that. It's just like a household that overspends. So now you say, okay, well, we're going to change that. Mm-hmm. That didn't work.
Right.
We have all this debt.
Right.
But it's not just as easy as saying we're going to change that and put a new congressional leader in place and say, okay, now it's going to go away. There's actually changes that need to take place.
We elected this president and we elected this Congress. So in some sense, we're the problem.
Right.
I think that's what I'm hearing you say, right? I mean, they weren't imposed. You know, we're not occupied territory. We chose the government we got because of the people that we are.
We asked for change. We just weren't sure quite what kind of change we were going to get, but now we know.
Yes, now we know. So have we learned our lesson?
I think it'll be interesting in November to see. I think there is a grassroots that is kind of waking up to this, hey, I wanted change, but I wasn't banking on this kind of change. And so I think hopefully we'll see a movement back to some more pro-production type change. It won't solve the problem. You still have to, as individuals
Yes.
and businesses and so forth,
You're
apply the
optimistic
principles.
about that movement. You're optimistic about what's going on in the grassroots level.
Yes.
But it's not a short-run thing because it's a struggle.
Right. There's a transition issue that you have to go from if you're going to be fiscally imprudent and move to now being prudent.
Yes.
You have to make some changes, and that's on spending.
Yes.
Now you can look at what's happening in Europe today.
Yeah.
They tell Greece that you need to change your spending.
Yes.
Well, people are impacted by that. What happens?
So even when the nation gets convinced that it's going in the wrong direction, it's like when you sit down with someone in financial. Getting convinced is maybe a tenth of the battle. Actually, changing is always the problem.
Well, you can have a belief that then becomes a conviction, which should then impact behavior. But it has to do like that. You can just believe it, but if you don't make any change,
Yes.
I should do this. I should be on a budget. I could. If I made more money, I would, but I will. You have to move from I could, I should, I would to I will.
To I will.
And that requires sacrifice and change.
And the country needs to do the same thing.
And so this starts with the people. And so the election won't necessarily, even if we get a positive result,
Right.
turn things around, but it could begin to help people realize, wake up and say, I've got to make some changes.
Good point. Russ Crosson, Vince Birley, thanks so much for being with us. I'm Jerry Bowyer. Back to you, Terry Madonna.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about seniors, you know, what can they do to improve the quality of their life. Joining me is Dr. Judith Black. She's the medical director with Highmark. She handles seniors, and Kathy Raimondi. She's a case manager with Medicare Advantage. All right, folks, let's get right to it. The seniors have, you know, a set of needs that are in some ways very different from other folks. We know what happens with chronic illnesses, especially as you get older. Doctor, let's talk about, give our viewers some sense about what kind of special conditions lead to, you know, these needs that need to be met when you get to be, you pick the age, a senior, we'll just put it that way.
Well, the problem is that there's multiple conditions. It's not just one. So many seniors over the age of 65 have 3 or even 4 conditions. So that's why it's so important that when you go to see your doctor, you have a list of questions. Mm-hmm. You tell your doctor at the beginning you have a list. You take your medications with you, mm-hmm. because medications is such a huge problem for seniors who have these multiple conditions, so that you really understand why you're taking these medications.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you all have suggested, or I think I didn't realize even existed, was a partner that you can take with you. Somebody, I guess, that you have to get approval to do. You know, you have to sign off. So this person to help explain all of these complicated procedures and as the doctor points out, how important is that for some people?
I think it's vitally important, because when a person enters a doctor's office, they're already overwhelmed by what is happening in their own personal lives with regard to their medical diagnosis and how that impacts on the rest of their life. It's not just about a diagnosis. So having someone with them who can absorb some of that information in an objective way is really vital.
Yeah, I noticed that we all go to visit a physician, and I see, you know, sometimes with elderly people, there's someone along as help navigate. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But who can be a health partner?
Anyone can be a health partner, as long as they are there to ask the right questions, to help the senior navigate the healthcare system, understand their medications, and even help them with a personal health record. And really are encouraging our seniors to bring in a personal health record to share with their doctor about what's happened to them and what are their goals for their visit.
One of the things that you talk about is sort of case management. I mean, that's a term that a lot of our viewers might not be familiar with. What's case management?
Case management is a way to enable a member to navigate the healthcare system. And in order to do that effectively, first of all, you have to be a good listener. So when you make that phone call, you have to be able to hear not only what that member is saying, but what he's not saying. What are the emotions behind what he's saying? How is this affecting his whole life? And in that way, then, you can move along toward what are his goals? Are his goals to travel to see grandchildren? Are his goals to be out of pain? What is the focus of this particular member? And how can we best help?
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, we're going to continue to dwell on this. I want to talk about, you know, sort of red flags that come up about medical conditions and how all this can be navigated through the complexities of America's healthcare system. All of that following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business, with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking with Judith Black, MD, and Kathy Raimondi. She's a Medicare Advantage specialist with Highmark about senior health care. Look, let's talk a little bit about hospital. You know, when you go to a doctor's office, it's relatively easy. You know, you get in and you get to see go to a hospital, you got a whole different consideration. Am I correct about that? More complicated?
It is very complicated for seniors. They're seeing lots of different healthcare professionals who may be using a different term for the same disease. So they could say heart failure, congestive heart failure. There are many different medications that could affect them. So it's so important that in that particular time that a senior has a health partner with them.
Yeah, that's really one place where it may even be more advantageous than a physician, just seeing a physician because of the complexity of it. But you would still argue, get someone, make sure they're tied to your hip, right, when you go to see a physician, correct?
That's exactly right. And the issue or the component where case management can be helpful is also then speaking with discharge planners. So
what's that? Explain that.
A discharge planner is a person at the hospital who starts the discharge planning process, whether that would be to home or to a nursing home or wherever the best suited care level is for that person. So in collaborating with that person, then we're able to, as a team, make sure that this member's goals are still being met and that this person is anticipating what the next step is.
Yeah, you know, since you've practiced medicine, I mean, healthcare has really gotten very complicated. I mean, you just, as you point out, you're dealing with medications, you're dealing with these complicated terms that people don't understand, but you're also dealing with insurance. I mean, we all we all want insurance. 85% of Americans have it. We'll see what happens with the health care plan and how that will work out. But for example, Medicare Advantage, which is important, some aspects of that are changing, correct?
Well, there are aspects of it changing, but not as much as seniors think. It's going to be here. It's just saying it'll be in the same form.
Reiterate that. I think that's an important point.
Medicare Advantage is here to stay.
Okay.
We are planning on continuing to offer Medicare Advantage to all of our seniors that we have before who would like to select it.
Okay.
It's extremely helpful because seniors can get extra help, like from the case management.
Yeah.
They can get coached into what questions they need to ask when they see their doctor.
And one of the advantages is sort of that we've been working on is that everybody says you should do is preventative care. And that may be somewhat affected by the what's going on, correct?
Absolutely, and it is another of the many types of situations that would be appropriate for case management.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in, and as these changes, you come back, and we'll continue. We can continue to talk about this over the year. All right. As always, thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and I always end it this way: stay well.